Hi, and welcome to From Many People's Strength, the podcast that covers Saskatchewan politics and current events. My name is Cory, and my pronouns are he and him.
And I am David. My pronouns are they, them, or he, him.
Okay, it's been a couple weeks.
Yep.
Because of I went back to my old job.
Yeah. So all of those people who decided that your opinion didn't count because of the work you did, do they now respect your opinion?
Right, yeah.
Or will they find a different excuse to discount your opinion?
I work in the oil field now, therefore I can
Your opinions are
talk.
justified.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So for 6 months I didn't work in the oil field, so my opinions were worthless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, so now I guess we'll be a bi-weekly show until something else happens. Because my schedule is
a
week on,
schedule.
week off.
Yeah. No, that's good. I'm glad. I am glad that you are finding yourself in a stronger economic position in the system that you are forced to live within, in spite of the job not necessarily being your dream job.
Yeah.
I don't know how polite I need to be.
That is actually the perfect way to describe it.
Okay, perfect. So,
right.
Slightly, the format's pretty similar to what we've done. We're going to do like some general headlines, a couple like rapid fire in the middle, and then move into some deeper looks at a few things.
Yeah, and then we do have some feedback as well on YouTube.
Excellent. I love feedback.
So that'll be good.
I haven't looked at it yet. Do they call me stupid again?
Nope, nobody calls us.
All right. That's excellent.
It's all from Richard again. So
okay, and you know what? Like, I love the fact that he disagrees with us on things, and yet is respectful and polite, and it doesn't come in and say, "I think your opinion is wrong because you're stupid." It's, "I think your opinion is wrong because we are approaching things from a different philosophical framework." So
yeah,
I can definitely respect that.
Airports in Regina and Saskatoon must reapply for international designation.
Yeah.
Transport Canada removes designation for a handful of airports. So in January, Transport Canada released a new document outlining requirements for Canadian airport to be considered international. And the document lists 13 airports across the country, and Saskatoon and Regina are not on the list. Not a whole lot to this story. Like, they're reapplying. Saskatoon thinks that they will end up getting the designation because they have all these other things in place. Michael Cram, MP for Regina Wascana, of course, blamed the Liberal government as though it was some kind of like Justin Trudeau took offense to something that the Saskatchewan government did and is attacking the airports for some reason. Right. But
not Calgary or Edmonton.
No, just
Saskatchewan. Trudeau loves Alberta. Is the rationale?
Yes, that's correct.
You know what? You're right. If all of a sudden I saw Edmonton, Calgary, Regina, and Saskatoon lose their international status, and you were seeing similarly sized airports in cities not lose it, I'd be asking some questions. I'm pretty darn certain this is a bureaucratic issue rather than a political issue. Like, I could be wrong. There could be political interference here, but
I would be willing to bet that this never was touched by a politician.
Yeah.
This was
like the Minister of Transportation probably saw something, right? Yeah. Like the Minister of Transportation probably was involved in, ex-bureaucrat does a report, cost efficiencies. Here's a more efficient, way we should be categorizing things. That gets passed up the chain. Some guy higher up says, yes, recommissions another report. Like, my guess is this was 10 years in the making. So if we looked at the origins, it probably actually goes back to being under Harper. Along that process, the transport minister probably had to oversee things. The deputy minister, who is not an elected position, but is still often a politicized position, sort of the head of the bureaucracy is beholden to the minister. Like there's some, like there's probably oversight at some level that involved politics, but this isn't a Justin Trudeau doesn't like Regina and Saskatoon. No. This was some guy. And I from what we're hearing, even if the designation does fall by the wayside, it has very limited impact on flights because non-international airports still can service flights to and from the United States.
Yeah. There's going to be
a handful of charters by the sounds of things.
Yeah. There's going to be the odd thing that needs to be a stopover instead of a direct flight.
Right.
But we can still go to Regina Airport and fly to wherever, right?
Yeah. Well, and because most, like, unless it's a charter, most flights do have stopovers. You don't fly, even if you can get a ticket to Hawaii from, like, Hawaii's still part of the US. I don't know how that is impacted, but even if you can get a ticket to Mexico City from Regina, that flight wouldn't be a direct Regina, Mexico flight.
Right.
That's going to stop off either in Toronto or it's going to stop off at a US hub of some kind. Same with if you're flying to Europe, same with, like, there just aren't direct flights from Regina to a lot of international destinations anywhere. Same with Saskatoon. Yeah. It sucks. Like I'm guessing, and I don't know, but just from what I've read before, I'm guessing there's funding involved and probably security differences. So this will either make getting through security faster or slower at Regina Airport. I don't know which.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it'll probably be one of the two.
Saskatoon is like the representative from the Saskatoon airport. They're pretty certain they don't see a change in their designation actually. So
yeah. And like they probably have to say, like, my guess is some guy at Regina also said that. He just didn't have that quote landed. Like, I'm guessing everyone who's about to lose it or might lose it probably says the same thing.
Yeah. Well, we don't really expect them to lose it. Yeah.
Exactly. But
yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Like, we'll see what the fallouts are of that. I think that story is good to talk about now because it puts it on the radar and becomes a bigger story when the final decisions are made and when we actually learn what those impacts are.
Saskatchewan Indigenous Environmental Group calls for halt to public land sell-off. Obviously, the government's not going to halt any sales. But a coalition of Indigenous agricultural and environmental groups is calling for the provincial government to keep Crown land public. And they say that the government has accelerated Crown land sales over the past decade, with more than 1 million acres passing from public to private hands, resulting in a loss of valuable natural grasslands.
Yep.
And of course, they say it's wrong to sell off the land while First Nations are still in talks to receive the land promised, but hasn't been delivered. I think that second piece really strikes home to the core of it. For me, like, if you can't sell land that isn't yours. So unless the previous discussions have been dealt with, how are we selling this land? It's only because the government has the power.
Yeah.
And, so they're just doing whatever they want.
Yep. No, it's in a private incident, if there is, like, if someone is challenging my ownership of my house and a lien gets put on my house because of it, or, like, I can't then sell it like that. There's legal issues there. Yeah. I also, like, and I've somewhat ranted about this in the past as well. As a private individual, again, the government, like, conservatives always wanted to be like, oh, let's run this like a business. And they keep comparing it to, oh, you couldn't run your personal household budget this way. Well, first of all, governments don't have budgets the same way personal households do. But
no.
If we do want to continue that metaphor, and I know I sound like a broken record on this, is I, as a personal household, cannot consider my budget to be balanced if all I'm doing is selling off assets to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's still a loss.
If I own stuff that that are one-time things that once I've sold them, they're gone, that's not me balancing my budget.
No, that's selling your comic book collection to get out of debt.
Yeah. Which, you know what? As a private individual, sell your comic book. But, like, more important, it's selling the car you take to get to work to get out of debt.
That's true.
Right?
Yep.
Because this isn't something that's only worth money because a collector wants it. This land has value. This land has long-term value for the current owners, which are all of us. The government doesn't own this land. The people own the land. The governments are stewards of that ownership. And as stewards, we've given them the right to buy things and sell things on our behalf. But that's a shitty thing to sell. It's not like it no longer has value. It is not like it. The article doesn't talk about this, but I think what things are being sold for matters as well. Because it's not just like selling a car that drives away and you never see again. It's like selling a chunk of your own backyard. If I sold a chunk of my backyard and someone builds an outhouse on it, that's going to be unpleasant for me. So I think the call to halt sales until more work is, and again, why are we selling assets? That's another big question. Unless there's a legitimate reason we don't want to own this crown land anymore, which is again a political, philosophical thing.
Right.
The other thing, again, if we want to try and be think selfishly about it, okay, let's pretend we don't have compassion for people. Let's sort of be the cold, hard calculus of the situation. And let's not even care about balancing budgets. If we have 100 units of land that is currently owned by the Crown, and at some point or another, courts or negotiations or whatever method is used towards resolution results in 20 of those units of land being returned to Indigenous people. If we have 100, we can start negotiating fairly easily, in quotation, easily, about which 20 of that 100 it becomes.
Right.
If we sell off 60 of it and only have 40 left, we have a lot less control over what 20 gets given away. And it may end up being 25 or 30 at that point because the original land that it should have been is gone and no longer ours to give away. And that should cause people to have pause because, again, if you are cold-hearted, if you're racist, there's land that you don't want to have to give away. And if you sell everything but the land you don't want to give away, when it comes time to return the land that you need to return, you're going to have to give that away. And that should give people pause as well, even if you don't care about all of those other things.
It's just the Saskatchewan government, conservative government, kind of, this is their bag, right? This is what they do.
How can we privatize without calling it privatization?
Regina Police Service issues cease and desist letter to Victory Church. They had a parody video where they were arresting citizens in the name of the Lord. Well, what?
Yeah. This one, again, baffles me on how the church thinks this is a positive thing, right? Putting out a video, we're intolerant bigots who will arrest people for not following our faith. Yes, that's what we think you are as well. Why are you?
Why do you think that's a good thing?
Well,
what?
A bit of a cell phone, but don't you deny being that when people accuse you of being that?
Yeah.
Because they usually do.
Yeah.
But it's also interesting that nothing can be done about all of these things this church is putting out there on the internet. They can they can compare queer folk to pedophiles. They can do all of these horrendous things. And no one can do anything. Right. They had a funny video 7 years ago or 6 years ago that have people in uniforms that look kind of like Regina police uniforms now the full force of the law can come in
that's
and
right.
shut them down, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I'm glad they're stepping in at something. Like, anytime two groups that I don't like are on opposite ends from each other and they're going at each other, I'm not not going
to get in the way and say, stop.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah, it's just this bizarre, like, they're showing their true colors, right? Like,
yeah,
we can't step in unless you say mean things about police.
Yeah, that's right.
And they thought they were complimenting the cops when they were doing it. But
well, yeah.
Yeah. They thought they were portraying the police in good light.
And the law they broke is one about impersonating police, right? It's not it's about
it's a trademark violation.
Yeah, essentially, right?
Yeah, it's essentially just trademark because it's not impersonating an officer because they weren't doing it to someone else.
Right.
It was using the uniform brand or insignia without express permission.
Yeah.
Kind of think people should be allowed to parody the cops. Like, if it's a parody, if it's satire, that should fall under fair use within trademark. Like,
I would think so.
All of the things that you're going after these guys for, like I said, each side going after the other one and becoming enemies to each other and letting them take care of themselves is great and all, but like, no, if you're making fun of cops, you should be allowed to do so.
Yeah, that's right.
But trademark isn't supposed to get away from legitimate satire and legitimate parody.
At least at the time of this article, it was just a cease and desist letter anyway. Right. Which isn't legally binding per se. Yeah. It's a letter from your lawyer saying, stop doing this. So they could potentially fight back if they cared enough to. And continue to make fun of the police or whatever they are doing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
So I guess they're not technically making fun of the cops. The cops aren't the ones they're parodying in this.
What are they even? What is it a parody of?
Well, parodying.
What's the humor in this video?
Actually, maybe it's not even parody. I don't know where that line between it's they're making up a pretend police movie. Well, they're pretending it's a cop show.
It's just it's a fake. It's not. I don't know. Yeah. What is a parody?
Yeah. Is Brooklyn Nine-Nine a parody of a cop show? It feels almost wrong to put this in the same category as Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But it was a funny article.
It was an amusing thing.
Yeah.
We'll see what comes of it. If Victory Church wants to start making enemies out of cops, couldn't happen to a nicer bunch.
Yeah, exactly. Direction. Fixing social safety net, best way to keep Saskatoon women safe.
No shit.
Yeah.
And I say that with the fact that I have constantly said in the past, no, it's good when research is done that proves the obvious, because that is how you get legitimate support. That's because there are people who don't understand the obvious. And, if anytime there is a study that proves something that I just look at and go, what the fuck, we already knew that. I remind myself that some people don't, and it's always good to have proof. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Maybe this can get into hands of somebody there's not much to say about it, except that, we lack, in Saskatchewan, we lack a lot of supports for people who need them. And, it's always good to have something to say that we need more.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think this is a topic we've talked about numerous times, where it's the core issues are making sure people are safe and secure. And if you don't have economic freedom, it's almost impossible to have personal freedom when it comes to leading abusive situations, because your life is dependent on another person. So if you're in an abusive situation, it's incredibly difficult to get out if the economics aren't there. Housing, affordable housing, safe injection sites, employment, safety from violence, and it has ripple effects. You reduce the danger in one area, and you provide safety for others as well, because people who have tools to break the cycle of addictions aren't committing crimes to feed their addictions, aren't providing resources to others who would use violence to maintain a black market, right? Like it's these things all ripple and have a snowball effect. So, again, it's always me coming up with here's why it's in your selfish best interest to support this stuff too.
Even if you don't care about people,
even if you don't care about people, from a selfish, self-interested perspective, these are still things you want to put in place. It saves tax money in the long run. It reduces crime. You don't care about reducing suffering, but it does. That's
the thing that we care about.
Because there are people in the world who care about the reduction of suffering. They're going to be less grumpy when you are interacting with them.
That's right. Exactly. If there's less suffering, we are less unhappy.
Yeah,
we can go for coffee and talk to our conservative friends, and we don't have to keep bringing up the failings of their conservative government.
I have avoided the comment section on this one for the most part.
Probably a good call.
Yeah. I actually think if someone is like the whole don't read the comments idea, I think is important for mental health, with the understanding that if you are in a privileged group, it's important that from time to time you do go read the comments, because it is very tempting for centrists to forget how horrifying some of the people out there are. Because like the people who are just horrifically, blatantly racist, you know what, that they're going to continue being what they are. It's the people who are on the center who are like, oh, no, it's not that bad. No, go read the comments. Like, if you think it's not that bad, whether it's a violence against women issue and you're a man and you don't think it's that bad, or if you're white and you hear an issue where there's a racial element to it and you don't think it's that bad, go read the comments. Because I also know there are people out there who are going, oh, no, this isn't because of race. This is just because he killed people. Like, no, read the comments. You will see that the people who are calling for him to be deported absolutely have a racial element to their argument, because they're being very open and honest about that.
Nobody's, the racists don't care, like, that on the comment section they're being racist, right? Like they are being, they want this person out. In fact, if they could, they would deport as many people of other ethnicities as they could.
Exactly. So the story of Situ being deported, again, outside the comment section, it seems to be like amongst most people I know, and like when you read the article, so like the parents and family of the kids who died all seem to be pretty universally in favor of not deporting him. That like it seems that most are saying, you know, he did the right thing. He came forward. He turned himself in. He pled guilty. He didn't appeal the sentence, in spite of it being the highest sentence in Canadian history for a crime of a similar nature. And legal professionals across the country saying if he had appealed, he would have gotten a lighter sentence. Like that seems to be, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know, but that seems to be right wing through left wing, a pretty universal belief that had he appealed, he would have gotten a lesser sentence. Like, take politics out of that. That seems to be pretty damn near close to a hard fact. You know, and prior to the crash, Situ had a spotless record. And when I say it's the highest sentence for a crime of a similar nature, for a crime where it was no alcohol was involved, no reckless driving was involved, no drugs of any kind were involved. It was someone who was tired from driving too much. So there was no alcohol, no drugs, no speeding, no texting. Like those are the big four, right? Alcohol, drugs, speeding, texting. None of those were involved. had been driving 2 weeks solid without a break. He was tired and got distracted.
Yep.
I don't want to say it's not an excuse, because to some extent it kind of is.
But
got distracted by a flapping tarp on his trailer. So it wasn't that he fell asleep. He was tired, and he admitted that. He got distracted by a flapping tarp, looked away, and it was at an intersection that had already killed 6 people previously.
Right.
We know this is an intersection that was dangerous. It was a known issue. Like, one of the things in the article, and I'm going to read this because it's fairly deep within the article. I saw you smile, so I think you know what I'm about to read. By contrast, according to a brief Sea-Doo's Calgary lawyer, Michael Green, filed with the CBSA, a Saskatchewan driver who had previously dodged charges of drunk driving and fleeing the scene of a crash drove through a stop sign in 1997, killing a 39-year-old woman and injuring her young son before fleeing the scene without rendering assistance. He was not charged with leaving the scene, but received a traffic ticket for driving without due care and attention and paid a small fine. That driver, Scott Moe, is now Premier of Saskatchewan. Mm-hmm. So how can you say race doesn't play a part in it when the citizens of this province have absolutely no problem voting for someone who did literally the exact same thing, possibly worse, because we don't know if Scott Moe was drinking, speeding, texting, or on drugs at the time, because he fled the scene. The tough on crime crowd, for one, they are hypocrites because they're almost never actually universally tough on crime. They're tough on crime when it's done by people a different color than them. But the tough on crime crowd will often talk about victims' rights and refer to themselves as fighting for the victims. Well, the victims in this case or the families thereof, are almost universally calling for lenience, compassion, and allowing Sea-Doo to remain in this country.
Yep.
So it seems, and again, from everything that I've read on this story, the law seems pretty clear that he shouldn't be deported. Like, by the law, he shouldn't be. So if he'll be deported, it will be because of political interference. So, I'd like to be optimistic. I'd like to be optimistic that this becomes someone who is able to remain in the country, is able to return to being a productive member of society. I talked a little longer on this one because it's one I am pretty passionate about. And it's so cut and dry, and we may revisit this down the road after courts decide that he is not to be deported, and we get to be, happy about the right decision being made and go from there. But
I hope so. Yeah. But the City of Regina report recommends removing the John A. Macdonald statue from Victoria Park. Well, so
this one I did read the comments on.
Oh yeah, I bet it was fun. Yeah. So, City of Regina report headed to City Council this Wednesday and recommends removing the John A. Macdonald statue that currently stands in Victoria Park, and then I guess they'll put it in storage. So the report was considered in a private session by Regina's executive committee last Monday after a review of the legacy of the statue was launched amid calls for its removal last June during the various discussions on race and Black Lives Matter and history. And I mean, I was arguing with the people in Reddit in the Reddit threads in June here. Yeah. So the people on Reddit at the time, like, there was somebody spray painted it, and everybody was very adamant that defacing this revered statue is a big deal. And, obviously I think that paint washes off, so it wasn't that big a deal. This is a hopefully more permanent solution.
It's one of those things you can tell to some degree that the people, or at least a large portion of the people who are arguing for keeping the statue there, know they're on the wrong side because they never actually use a good faith argument. And what I mean by that is the two most common arguments that I hear about keeping the statue is, one, the no big deal argument. This isn't an important enough issue for us to be spending time on. And the reason I say that's not a good faith issue is then don't spend time on it. Then let it be taken down. If it's no big deal, it should be no big deal for it to be gone. But that's not their actual argument. They're like, and I find that to be the case. It's not just with statues. That's such a big thing. If someone is arguing against change and they are arguing that just keeping the status quo is no big deal, it's a bad faith argument because changing the status quo would be no big deal then as well. And there are obviously people who care about it. So if you don't think this is an important enough issue to care about, why not let the people who do care get their way?
Yep.
If me and 3 other people are ordering pizza and I honestly don't care about what toppings go on it, I'm not going to get in an argument with them over what toppings go on it.
Right. You'll just get whatever.
If we've always ordered pepperoni, if we've ordered pepperoni 4 weeks in a row and other people are going, you know what? Why don't we try Hawaiian this week? And I go, we shouldn't change because it's no big deal. It's obviously a big deal. I need to be arguing. No big deal isn't an argument. I have to argue why we should keep it as pepperoni then, right?
Yeah.
So that's why number one isn't a good faith argument, the no big deal argument. And number 2, and this one is I think they know they're full of shit when they make this one, is the how else will we know history? We don't keep statues up to commemorate people. We keep statues up because it's history, and those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. I hear that all the time when it's about keeping up statues.
Yeah.
And it's like, there are all sorts of important events from history that we don't have statues of. Like, we don't have statues of Slobodan Milosevic in our parks. That's an important event in history, is the genocide in the former Yugoslavia, right? Like, and if you say, oh, okay, well, no, that's because he's not Canadian. Okay, we don't have statues of Paul Bernardo up in our parks. We don't have statues of Robert Picton up in our parks. That's a bullshit argument. We don't put up statues of people who do garbage things. So if you strip away those 2 arguments, then the argument has to come down to John A. Macdonald is worthy of celebration. And they don't want to have that argument because they know he's not.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are a few people who do come out and say, you know what, he did some bad things, but they're not as bad. Like, the good outweighs them, which is a failed, like, that is a good faith argument. They may believe it. Yeah. But it's lots of people don't want to have that one because there's so much evidence that it's wrong, right? Yeah. So there's a small portion of the population who is going to argue that. Like, and I am sure they're like, I even think of my grandmother, who's a wonderful person, probably would have thought that because didn't know about all the horrible things, because that was stuff that didn't get talked about. And, I think were she alive today, she probably, after hearing the good arguments for why it needs to be gone, probably would go, oh yeah, I didn't know that. Now that I know that, I want him gone. But I think there are people who just don't know his true history.
Yeah, that's right. And
who will argue for that what he did wasn't that bad because they don't know.
Yeah, and even once they learn a little bit of it, they'll just say things like I can see people I know specifically saying like, all bullshit. That wasn't, that's just the way it was the time. That was just the way, it was just the way the country was run or whatever. This and that and the other, excuse after excuse after excuse.
Which is bullshit on 2 fronts. One, no, he was bad for the time at which he lived. It wasn't as if we're judging him purely on a 21st century moral compass.
Which I think is okay, actually, anyway.
Well, 2, the statue's going to be up in the 21st century. So I'm not going, like, let's say there's someone who was progressive for their time, but, in retrospect, not so much.
Right.
Putting up the people who put up statues for him at the time, I don't fault them for it. Yeah, maybe it was someone who was progressive for the time. In the case of McDonald, again, I kind of, he wasn't.
Right.
But we're not existing in time machines. We're not living in 19th century Regina and looking at statues in 19th century Regina. We live in the 21st century. We should be commemorating things that align with the values of the 21st century. And so, like, my solution in the whole, let's not forget history is, if you really want to keep the statue and make sure there's a plaque that is as big as the statue that outlines the atrocities that he committed.
Yeah.
And say,
then you're actually discussing history.
The people who don't want to remove the statue dislike that idea even more. And we see that in lots of places, right? When these statues debates come up, when people say, hey, you know what, fine, let's leave the statue up and we will talk about how this person perpetrated a genocide and they were a horrifying racist. Like horrifying racist, again, even for the times in which they lived. So the statue was put in place in 1967 as part of the Canadian Centennial commemorations. A lot of times these discussions, they get discussed as well as though the statue has been there literally since the dawn of time. Yeah.
And we're tearing down some historical monument that's, it itself is history. And it's, 67's, it's a while ago. It's 10 years longer than I've been alive, but it's not that big a deal.
The people who care about it being taken down only care about it because it's being taken down. I would be shocked. I tell you, if any of them bring their kids to the statue and be like, hey, this is an important person that you need to learn about. Or, when the city does fundraisers about, clean up our parks or downtown beautification, are donating money to downtown beautification projects, right? Like, maybe there's some, again, like there's probably a splinter group, somebody's grandmother somewhere who, had donated her time to go down, clean up garbage from Victoria Park and donated money to downtown rejuvenation, who attended, Confederation Days or whatever that celebrated 1867. But like, that's two people. And that's a fictional person I'm making up in my head. I don't know anyone like that. Yeah. But if that person exists, they are one or two people. So
I have never met a person who went to specifically look at the John A. Macdonald statue for any reason. So
none that I can think of either. Yeah, I go and look at statues anytime I'm in a park. Like anytime I'm in a park, I like to go look at statues and read the plaques. Yeah. I'm a giant nerd. So I have gone and checked it out. But I'm also one of the people who think, we should remove it.
That's right.
And, if you want to talk about, if you want to remember his legacy, even like still put up that same plaque that I was talking about, or put up a commemorative statue to the victims of residential school violence. Like there are other things in this country we should be commemorating, that I think would be very appropriate to go there. So.
SaskTel announced in a press release that Samsung is going to be the company that is handling our 5G upgrades. So that's neat, I guess. I'm looking forward to 5G upgrades.
Yeah.
I don't think that 5G is giving us all whatever bad things the conspiracy theorists.
Telepathy? Oh.
COVID. That's what it is.
Is it giving us COVID? Damn it. But we don't have it yet, and we're the hot spot.
Yeah, that's right. There was a teen, Jackson McDonald. He was found dead in Duck Mountain Provincial Park. This is obviously a tragedy that I saw it and I wanted to acknowledge it. I tried to, when I see these articles in the news, I do try to bring them up so that we can at least mention them.
Yeah, I saw that one when it was the missing persons case, and those are never good when it turns the other side of it. So
Carry the Kettle Urban Reserve reveals urban development plan in Northwest Regina. I took a look at this. It seems like it's a pretty neat plan. I'm always happy when more stuff's going on.
Casino, cultural center, hotel, care home.
Yeah.
All of that seems like positive economic development. I think it's one of those pretty good news all around. I think issues around how much support for Indigenous communities, how much economic support for Indigenous communities is derived from gambling is problematic. Yep. But if the support isn't coming in other ways, more power to them for taking the tools that they do have at their disposal. It then just becomes really important for the government to implement addictions counseling programs, because addiction is a disease and should be treated as a healthcare issue. So, but again, not blaming the reservations for that in any way, shape, or form, because that's the economic tool that they have available to them when other economic tools have been denied. So,
I guess just an addendum. I guess it says the Cowessess, Nikanit, Piapot, and Sakamay, and Star Blanket First Nations all have already established urban reserves within Regina. So that's cool. I mean,
also another addendum point. Oh, sorry, I'll let you finish yours.
No, I was just going to say it's a thing I like.
No, I agree. They've also signed a memorandum of understanding with the city, so the final details aren't hammered out, but this basically, in principle, this is good to go. But the other point I was going to make is something I've noticed is that anytime there are pictures of Indigenous groups making announcements or speeches or presentations, every single person is wearing their mask and wearing it properly. Actually,
I'm going to bring that up just to show that
contrast.
That's interesting. Hey,
every time I see pictures, that is universal.
They're all wearing masks.
And never below the nose, keeps it on. If you watch it, it is pretty damn near universal. When you're seeing stories of Indigenous groups making presentations, I'm sure there's an exception out there somewhere.
I'm sure there is.
Like if you go looking, you'll find it. But in my anecdotal observations, that has been pretty consistent.
Saskatchewan ends 2020 with fewer people than it began for the first year in 15 years. Yeah. So when I think we talked about population going down earlier this year. Not really a surprise in my opinion, but
I knew it was coming. And population shouldn't be the number one measure of success for a province. The Sask Party has made it one, which if you're choosing the benchmark by which you want to be judged, you don't get to complain when you fail against that benchmark.
Yeah.
Because either you failed against an important benchmark or you fucked up making that your benchmark.
People will probably not agree with me on this if they support the Sask Party. But from my books, people are drawn to a province where people are successful, are supported, where you have a government that takes care of the issues that they're facing. If there's addictions, there's addiction support. If there's housing, there's housing support. If there's low income, then the government helps those people. And you'll find that people are drawn to a province that gives a shit about their citizens.
Oh yeah. The numbers tend to support that. And again, economic success feeds into that to some degree as well.
Right.
The population started growing in the last several years of the NDP government. So you had a few years near the end of the NDP after the austerity years when they were sort of got the ship righted. The population was growing, and the Wall government, to his credit, maintained the success that the NDP had started to generate. So, but again, it seems like that in and of itself does not seem like it's the best measurement. But if that is the measurement you're going to use, Scott Moe is failing.
Yeah, it's Francophone Month in Saskatchewan. Or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's all of Canada. But specifically, I know it's Francophone Month in Saskatchewan.
How do you know that, Corey?
I know this. Well, actually, I know this because of the Leader Post. No.
Okay. Fair enough.
Oddly enough, my partner has not mentioned this.
Okay.
But
wait, I have seen her mention it in social media posts.
Oh, it could be.
I'm going to get you in trouble.
Whoops.
Maybe I haven't. My French isn't good enough that I can understand her post without copying and pasting it into Google Translate. So
yeah, me either. So.
My kids are in French immersion, so and I grew up in Ontario, so I'm rusty. Written form, I can sometimes piece together about a third of what I'm reading. Spoken,
we have a 2-year-old in our house, and she is learning French and Kirundi and English. And as far as French and Kirundi, me and her are on the same page. Well, she probably knows more than me. But I'm learning from the 2-year-old.
That's great. That is a fantastic way to do it. I had hoped that when my kids were taking French immersion, I would be able to keep pace with them and failed on that.
I did not. Their brains are too elastic. They learn so fast.
So I'm working on it still. I'd like to be better support for them. It's such a useful skill. Canada and the United States are so weird in that we're unilingual societies. And that is a gross generalization. Lots of Canada and the United States is not unilingual. Huge swaths are not unilingual. But there are places in the world that are unilingual amongst people who don't have access to higher education. But I'm trying to think of if there is any place in the world other than Canada and the US, and maybe there is, but any place other than Canada and the US where members of the society who have access to higher education are unilingual.
I don't know.
I don't know if there is, because so many places that don't have English as their first language will then have at the very least English as a second language within their education system.
Almost everybody that I know who's from a non-English speaking country also speaks at least one other language.
Yeah.
So.
And often in addition, one other in addition to English even.
Yeah,
so that you're up to 3 at that point, let alone the 2 that we don't speak. So.
And then they almost always know bits and pieces of a couple other languages because.
Yeah.
Because they travel and they have to know that.
But I think. Yeah, for celebrating Francophone culture, I think is something we should do more of. I sometimes am baffled at how unaware most Canadians are at how horribly the Francophone population of this country was treated. Not on par with Indigenous communities, but
still bad.
Still really, really bad.
Yeah.
I think I talked about this months and months ago. The fact that prior to the Quiet Revolution in Quebec, the ethnic Francophone population made up 80% of the population, while the ethnic Anglophone portion of the population owned 80% of the wealth.
Yeah.
They had the income disparity. And again, there is more to oppression than economics, but the income disparity between Anglophone and Francophone in Quebec was greater than the racial or gender income disparities that existed then or now.
Yeah.
So Canada's history with the Francophone population, and it's I'm cautious on it because one of the things that has happened since the Quiet Revolution over the last 50 years is the culture has become a fairly racist one as well, anti-immigrant and racist.
Right. Yeah.
So it's these white Francophone people who have then become racist, but their own culture was one that was on the receiving end of oppression. It's complicated, but the celebration of Francophone culture and how it impacts the country is something that we should pay more attention to. Yep. It's not just poutine.
Nope, that's right. And in Saskatchewan, we have 53,000 people in Saskatchewan who speak French officially.
Yeah.
16,000 people who have French as their first language. 120,000 people in Saskatchewan have French heritage. So, I mean, that's not an insignificant number of people.
About a tenth of the province. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, I didn't learn this until I had a partner who was a francophone. But in Saskatchewan, they gave themselves the identity of Francescois, and I mean, that's neat.
Yeah, that's cool.
So there's a French Saskatchewan culture, and it's uniquely Saskatchewan. It's uniquely French. If you use the delivery service, the fees are capped for a month in Saskatchewan. Nothing that I have seen said that they are producing, like there was anything to introduce to protect the workers' wages or to stop extra fees being capped onto the customer. So I don't know what the result of this is going to be. And also this has apparently a 1 month deadline. So we'll see what happens in a month. There's not a terrible amount of, like a large amount of detail in this article, but I am a cynic in a lot of ways. It's not a good trait, but when I see something like this, my instinct is, okay, so now drivers are just going to get fucked. Because they don't want to lose profits, but okay. I already spent enough time on
I'm letting you go. You're the expert on that one, but yeah, I think you're right.
We were looking at a lockdown. Sandra Masters said that it was possible, and then we got our news that we are going into a lockdown as of today. It's Sunday the 28th. Restaurants are going to delivery takeout only. Churches are still allowed to have
30 people.
Yeah, 30 people in them. I did not see anything about like gyms are still going, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And I tried to go to mine today, and there was way too many people there, so I left. I was there for about 30 minutes, and then and then it was just too packed.
Schools are closed for 2 weeks. They were going to be closed for a week anyways, and it's a week of home learning for this coming week. Again, it's weird to announce it a week in advance and then allow everything to stay open for that week. So it's basically things we're going into lockdown as of today, but they announced it a week ago. So Facebook was filled with people talking about how they were all going to go out to restaurants to support it. So everyone was flocking to restaurants and packing. I
saw the same thing on Reddit. Like, what?
Yeah. So
this is a bad decision. Just like what? Why, when you know that we're in a hotspot and there's restrictions coming because of it, why wouldn't you stay home voluntarily?
Yeah, because people think that they are the exception.
Yeah, that's right.
And I talked about this before, and the idea that there is some gray area and people want to stick their toe into the gray area. It becomes creeping, and it becomes okay. Yes, it says this, that, or the other thing, but I'm going to stay within the spirit of the law, and that just becomes so easy to keep going. And like I said, I've got some sympathy for people who do sort of stay within the spirit of the law.
Right.
But if everyone tries to get that little bit of wiggle room and misjudges and then takes a lot of wiggle room, it's frustrating. And I don't know the solution. And again, it's what makes it even more frustrating is, and I've talked about this so many times, if everyone stayed at a risk level 2, we probably would have all been fine. But because so many people want to be at risk level 7 and 8, the rest of us have to stay at risk level 0.
Yeah.
And I this is on a personal level, and then I think it's a metaphor for the macro. I had a talk with my partner who lives in Saskatoon the last time I visited them, and at the end of the visit, we're like, you know what, we're allowed. Like that was within guidelines. We didn't break any rules while I was there, and it fell within what we were permitted to do. They were really the only other adult I have spent time with with the exception of my co-parent, since in a long time. And like, again, grocery store, try and, follow rules and whatnot, but stayed within rules. But at the end of that visit, we just had to talk, and they're immunocompromised, so they need to have sort of be extra cautious. And we just decided, because my co-parent is being as risky as they are, or she is, I can't see my partner anymore. It's just too high of a risk. So I lose the one person I was seeing because someone else has chosen to see a couple dozen people, spread out over 8 different households. The last that I know of. And again, that's a personal issue, but I think we have the same thing on the macro scale, where you have so many people who are trying to, some just flat out ignoring the rules. But even the ones who think the rules are important, believe COVID is real, think we need to be socially distancing, aren't anti-maskers, but just are like, you know what? It's okay if I do this. It's not, this isn't the issue. Makes it that much more dangerous for everyone else. So, yeah.
So, also related, and I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but also related, there has been a lot of calls to the Regina police for COVID violations. A lot of people have been calling the police to say, hey, my neighbors are doing this, or I saw somebody doing that and having too many people at their house. And that's a thing that is happening a lot. Also, there's some economic impacts to COVID this year. Obviously, downtown Regina is suffering a lot. That's all these articles I'll place in the show notes. Yes. And of course, the NDP is urging an expansion of the COVID-19 restrictions to Moose Jaw. So, I guess that's Regina's pandemic story.
Yeah. And vaccines are on their way. It's at age 62 and up now, plus those who are in high-risk groups. My partner in Saskatoon I was talking about got their letter in the mail on that they are now qualified to go get the vaccine because they are considered a high risk because of their medical conditions. So, light at the end of the tunnel. We will likely not spend a lot of time together in person until both of us are vaccinated. But I'm counting down the months. I'm not counting down the days yet.
Not yet. No.
But I don't know. If we're at age 62 now, I don't know, we'll hit the 40 plus range maybe in 3 months. I hope. Yeah.
And I know there was some people saying that the government, I think it was the Canadian government, was saying that we want to get everybody vaccinated by July or midsummer. But I don't know.
That'd be great.
I don't know.
It was weird. If you looked at the age range, there was, and I can't remember which 2 years it was, but for a while there, the vaccinations was for age, I think 63 to 66 and age 69 and up.
So
there was like this 2 years. It was 67 and 68, or I can't remember which 2 years it was, but there was a 2-year window right smack in the middle. I was like, no, not you. And my dad, like, I tried to figure out what the heck was causing
fuck
this.
you.
And this is one of those ones where people were in the comments, because I saw it post on Facebook of, what the fuck? Like, do we just not like people who are 68 for some reason? They're frustrated because it was almost 69, but not quite. No, they're like, and my suspicion, and no one ever came up with a good answer for it, but my suspicion is it was 2 different vaccines. And the vaccine for this age and up was ready, and the vaccine for this age and down was ready, but we're starting at and we just needed to backfill the window. So the youngest age for the old person vaccine was at this part, and the oldest age for the young person vaccine was at this part. And they hadn't quite met in the middle yet.
That makes
But
sense.
that's a pure guess. It was just one of those weird little quirks of the Saskatchewan vaccination schedule. So yes, we're living in the twilight zone this last 18 months, last year, I guess.
The RCMP discriminated against Colton Boushie's family and fueled racial tensions in the wake of shooting death. Review finds. I think we have touched on the situation of with surrounding Colton Boushie's death, murder, already, but yeah. The RCMP has been found by a review that they acted in a racist, discriminatory manner when it notified a Cree mother that her son had been killed. A civilian complaint process has found, resolving one aspect of a family's 4.5-year pursuit of accountability. I mean, we knew at the time during the Gerald Stanley trial that things had not been handled properly.
Yeah.
So in
the
a
police
sense,
treated the victim as the perpetrator.
Yeah. So we knew that, and this is not uncommon.
Part one of the report, or one part of the report that I obviously agree with, is the fact that yes, the report found that yes, the police were racist and that the police fucked up. When they destroyed police records, when they accused the mom of a child who had just died of being drunk, like all of these things, where I somewhat diverge from the opinion of the report, is they talk about how it's proof that more training is needed. It's not training, it's consequences that's needed. I don't think training is necessarily a bad thing, but this isn't because of lack of training. No. If it is, then we're dealing with why the heck are they hiring people who don't understand what a 6-year-old knows? Right? Because you go up to a 6-year-old and say, what do you say to someone who a family member has just died? They will be better equipped than the cops were when talking to Colton Boushie's mother. That's not training. Humans, we know better. This is not how that conversation would have gone had it been the mother of a white child who was gunned down. Right? Exactly. It wouldn't have been.
No, 100% wouldn't have been.
Right? We know that. If there had been a group of white teenagers, white 20-somethings and teenagers who had a flat tire, car broke down, they pulled off onto the side of the road that happened to be on a reservation and were shot and killed by Indigenous Canadians on that reservation, I guarantee you the mother of that white child would not have had the police treat them this way. And that's not training. If you're treating two different people differently, they obviously have the training to do it properly when someone is not Indigenous.
Yeah.
Right? Like that. Yep. How can you say it's again, management 101, you talk about competency versus commitment, or skill gap versus will gap. It's not a skill issue when someone has demonstrated they know how to perform the skill properly in the past and then choose not to demonstrate the skill. That is a will gap, not a skill gap. That is not training. That is consequences.
Yep.
This is unacceptable behavior, so stop accepting it.
And there won't be any, I don't think there will be any consequences. Nobody's going to look at this and go, okay, they did this wrong. They treated this as though they were storming a castle and not delivering news about somebody's death to their family. And now those people are going to be suspended or something.
No. The fact that the police union representing the RCMP officers is rejecting the report. Is flat out saying, nope, we're rejecting it. We don't accept the findings. Demonstrates that no amount of sensitivity training is going to change police behavior until that behavior is actually treated as unacceptable.
So that sort of leads into the other article that's on the same topic too. That's the head, also from the Globe and Mail. And RCMP destroyed police records from the night Colton Boushie died.
Yeah.
The RCMP destroyed records of police communications from the night Colton Boushie died and conducted a parallel internal probe into the handling of the case without notifying the civilian watchdog, according to a report from the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission. So not only did they behave inappropriately delivering the news to the mother, they also destroyed records and conducted a private internal investigation so that they could avoid any consequences or accountability. And this is, I mean, we say it over and over. I say it we say it. The police are no good.
If you fucked up at work and there was a videotape of you fucking up, you're on the oil rig. I don't actually know what you do in your oil field job, but like you're out there, you're doing your job, you fuck up, something bad happens because of it. Let's even say it was an honest mistake. Let's not even say it was because of an intentional decision to do something wrong. Let's say benefit of the doubt, 100%, you made an honest mistake, even due to lack of training. If you went and destroyed the videotapes that recorded you fucking up,
you're out.
Yeah. You're out if you're lucky, and you're in jail if you're not.
Yeah, that's right. It depends on the environmental impact of the of the mistake, right?
Yeah. I know I would be.
Yeah, 100%. If
I got caught destroying financial records, I would go to jail.
It's absurd.
I'm low enough on the totem pole that I go to jail. I understand there are people higher up on the food chain that we know that not everyone in other fields like oil or finance.
Yeah.
But you have to be pretty high up on the food chain before you don't face consequences.
Yeah, I don't think cops are workers. But if you draw a parallel between cops and workers, then they're not high enough on the totem pole to avoid consequences. Like they should be.
If it was in any other field, yeah.
If it was in any other field.
Yeah. It again, assuming, and I don't this isn't the case, but again, for sake of argument, assuming they every single mistake was an honest mistake. And again, I've already expressed that multiple times how I don't think it was.
It's not. Yeah.
If you make an honest mistake and then go back and destroy the records, that's the destruction of the records in and of itself is not a training issue. That is, again, there are rules around record retention. You're making a choice to violate those. You're making a choice. It is frustrating to the nth degree that this shit is still happening. Yeah. And it was discussing police in a different jurisdiction. But I was arguing with someone about another police brutality issue. A police misconduct issue. And they kept insisting that it wasn't race related. And at one point I finally was like, okay, then, I disagree with you, but assuming you're right, why the heck aren't you then just universally outraged?
Yeah.
If this type of thing was happening to white people as much as it was happening to Black and Indigenous and other marginalized communities, shouldn't you be as outraged? Shouldn't you be go look at your 22-year-old nephew or son or daughter and think to yourself, is it only luck that this didn't happen to my 22-year-old in my life? Because again, this wasn't someone breaking into a farm trying to steal something. This was a group of teenagers and 20-somethings who had car trouble, pulled off. And I'm sorry, I've been told since the day I moved to Saskatchewan that this is a province where everyone helps each other. And it's the type of province where if you have car trouble and you pull off on the side, your neighbor will help you out.
Yeah. That's
How many times do we get told that this is such a wonderful province? Because so if it's not race, if race had nothing to do with it, if this had nothing to do with race, doesn't that put a lie to the statement, this is a wonderful province where neighbors help each other out?
Yep.
Because they know it is a race issue. They know that their kids won't have this happen because they're white.
There's neither alternative is a good alternative, right?
And it's two separate, like we have two intersecting issues. You have the issue of police misconduct, and you have the issue of structural societal racism. And yes, they intersect this way, but both are issues in and of themselves. If we had a society where there was no police misconduct, if police were the one area of society that wasn't racist, they were the least racist part of society, they were an institution that was functionally incapable of being racist, the fact that we have structural racism in our society would still be problematic. Yep. Conversely, if we eliminated all structural racism from society, we lived in a completely race neutral, the concept of race never came into existence. Someone, found a magic lamp and the genie eliminated the concept of racism overnight. Police brutality and misconduct and disproportionate use of power and lack of accountability would still be a bad thing.
Yep.
So these two issues intersect in a way that make things like exponentially worse. Yeah. It's not like 5 levels of 1 times plus 5 levels of other is 10. No, they multiply. Yeah. But again, if for anyone who doesn't think this is racially motivated, you should be even more outraged because you should be scared that this could happen to you. This could happen to your family.
Yep. You can find us at anchor.fm/FromManyPeoples. Our Twitter is at skpoliticspod. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/FromManyPeoplesStrengthPod. And our Gmail is FromManyPeoples@gmail.com. We have a place where you can buy us coffee at buymeacoffee.com/FromManyPeoples. Richard bought us 5 coffees.
Nice. And you should enjoy them. Or now that you're on the oil field, maybe I will take one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I wasn't going to
share them now.
All right.
All right. Thank you for joining me again.
Thank you so much, Cory. And as always, thanks for all the hard work you do prepping things. Take care, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
You bet.